Chapter 14. Delivering the Message. Your telephone opening statement to VITO.
There it sits, just where you saw it yesterday, the 3,000-pound telephone. Strange, it hasn't rung once all week. Maybe there's something screwy with the phone line. If there's one topic connected to selling to VITO that is simultaneously challenging, interesting, dramatic, and potentially life-changing for each and every one of the people who take my Selling to VITO course, it's the inescapable responsibility of picking up the receiver and actually calling VITO. Yes, it is a responsibility, and it's also a privilege. It's something you have to hold yourself accountable for. Fortunately, it's a lot easier than you think. I could tell you story after story of my own experiences with this all-important task. I could tell you story after story about how my alumni have soared to success by using what you're about to listen to and learn and landing appointments, VITO appointments, for themselves. None of those stories would really matter, though. What's important here is your past experience and whether you are willing to allow it to stand in the way of implementing what you're about to listen to and learn. Before we get started, let me remind you of a couple of promises. Promise number 1. As I told you in the outset of this book, I will not teach or tell you to do anything that I'm not doing myself. In other words, you are not a member of my private test group. The day that I stop making my own VITO calls is the day I'll stop writing books and teaching seminars about how to do it. Promise number 2. What you're about to learn is both ethical and doable.
A memorable VITO call.
I will never forget the morning I reached out by telephone to VITO, the chairman of the board of a company that you would recognize, and his private assistant, Alice. Both VITO and Alice were receptive to my opening statement. However, they were skeptical that their salespeople, who were mostly fully degreed chemical engineers, would have what it takes to sell to VITO. VITO wanted me to do a pilot with all of his vice presidents. If you could get them to do it, he told me during that first conversation, my sales team will follow their lead. That was just what I wanted to hear. VITO's global sales team was 260 strong. His VP team consisted of 12 well-educated, experienced, highly capable professionals. Our pilot class with the VPs was held in Utah in the dead of winter. Why? Because VITO was an avid, accomplished skier with a retreat located smack dab in the middle of the mountains, and a private jet to take him there whenever he wanted. That's why VITO wanted to be close to the skiing. It worked for VITO, and so it worked for his VPs and me. During the first hour of my pilot class, a particular VP said, "Tony, if you think I'm going to pick up the phone and call the CEO of DuPont, you're nuts. Besides, he'll never take my call." I remember thinking silently to myself that this wasn't the best way to start a class. Actually, though, looking back, I realized that it was exactly what we needed to set the stage for one of the most successful rollouts of Selling to VITO ever. Here's why. That VP was brave enough to acknowledge his fear of calling a VITO of a very high-profile organization. And despite his opening comment, this VP was eager to hear what my process was all about. After the class, we scheduled a VITO Blitz Day. That's a day devoted completely to VITO prospecting, in which I personally assist the individuals making the calls to VITO. The day started with each of the VPs identifying the organizations he or she was going to call that day. Guess what? By coincidence, that VP, who in the first hour of the program said he'd never call the head of DuPont, guess what? He drew DuPont for his hit list. And guess what else? He did actually pick up the phone and call the CEO of DuPont. And guess what else? The CEO of DuPont picked up his phone totally unprotected by any gatekeepers. No, he never sold DuPont, but that's not the point.
An unexpected problem. Scott was 60% of quota year to date and working for one of the largest telecom companies in the world when he took Tony's Selling to VITO course. Shortly after the course, he was at his desk making cold calls to VITO. Paul, the director of sales, walked by and noticed that Scott was in his cube early. The following dialogue ensued. Paul: "Morning, Scott. Making some VITO calls?" Scott: "Yes, I sure am." Paul: "How's it going?" Scott: "I just got through to a president." Paul: "Great. How did it go?" Scott: "I got so nervous when I heard his voice, I hung up." Tony's favorite personal VITO call story.
One day, years ago, I had scheduled myself to make 10 VITO calls, and on my very first call of the day to the president of the third largest computer company in the world, VITO picked up the phone, completely unprotected by any gatekeeper. I was so surprised to hear VITO's voice that without thinking I said, "Oh, what a surprise. I expected to get your personal assistant, Tommy." VITO's response was quick and to the point. "Hold on, let me get her for you." And with a click, he was gone forever. I'll file this one under one big lost VITO opportunity. Learn the lessons from these 3 very different true stories. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're probably right. VITOs, no matter how big or how small, will and sometimes do answer their own phones. And perhaps most important of all,
VITO rule number 21. It's okay to make mistakes because none of this is life-threatening.
what's been your experience when using the telephone to contact your prospects? You wind up just leaving voicemail messages or getting shunted to a lower level person, or worse yet, being blocked by a gatekeeper? Does that happen to you day after day after day? If so, I have 4 words for you. Dude, change your process. You ever wonder what would happen if instead of doing what you're doing now, you reached out directly to VITO? I thought so. Here's what you can expect. 25% of the time, VITO will pick up, their own phone unprotected. Half of the balance, VITO's private assistant will pick up, and the remaining half of the balance, you get dumped into voicemail. Stick with me, and I'll make sure that you have everything you need to prepare yourself for all 3 great outcomes. If you want to get on the fast track and get all those C-suite appointments you've worked hard for and deserve so you could sell more faster and crush your quota in the process, then all you need to do is go to our site, VITOSalesTraining.com. Click on the Take Action tab, scroll down till you see the VITO University logo, and check it out. And in the meantime, have yourself a masterful rest of the day. Bye-bye.